he's like the Peck.
He's like, well, yes.
Yeah, they should go and live in a house together.
They certainly should.
Because the Peck likes courting things off the visions and...
Well,
the Q. He's a bit of a film critic.
He certainly is.
So, the two of them.
They do very well.
Yeah, they would. So, evening to the Q if you're listening. And...
Q in the country. We'll have to go visit the Q, do a random arbitrary...
Yes.
And tune his meters up for him.
Do a random access missions.
Yes, that's right.
A REV. Random access visit.
Yeah, he was complaining to me. He gave me tings that he could hear the holes, apparently, because that's not very far away.
And he was complaining?
Well, he couldn't hear anyone else.
I see.
And he thought that was a bit poor. Someone's going for a bubble and a boil there in Clayton.
And he's known as the Holes. What? Yeah.
I hope he's got a dose of K disease by now.
We didn't have anything to clean. Oh, here's a rubbish tin. Hang on. What? Right. Anyway. Yes. Anyone that doesn't listen to 2 Metres Channel D won't know what we're talking about.
What we're talking about.
That's how the Holes comes on.
What?
You say something that's in the slightest bit vague or double meaning, and that's what comes back at you.
You get a...
What?
A what?
What?
In fact, you can... It's very good. He's a very good judge, a watt meter of how vague you are, because sometimes you even get 2 or even 3 watts.
Well, that's how you tell how strong you are. If you get 10 watts, well, you're quite strong.
But it would have to be pretty absurd to get 10 watts.
And sometimes you only get 0.1 of a watt. All you get is just... So you know
it seems to be very non-linear. You only get that effect when it's completely and totally vague.
He's got some sort of power square, square law.
It seems to little rectifier diodes that measure the watts. There's some, when it's super vague, they just short out, and it's sort of like my power meter. When you put in lots of power, it says, nothing.
Yes. The old square law meter. When will he meter?
Square law. We're learning all about Legendre polynomials now.
Oh, my old friend Legendre.
Mr. Legendre.
I wrote an essay on him.
Oh.
I think he's in there somewhere. I wrote an essay on...
And it's very
Fermat.
bad. Look, we're not going to do a sausage about them in class. He's just thrown this massive bulk assignment and said, give this on the day of the exam, and it's about 20 reams of paper. Old imperial measure there, the ream of paper.
Reams and reams of hot water. What? Oh, that's what the K will be in. Yes, Legendre.
And legendary functions. And so, well, we have to do it all from first principles, solve Legendre's equation using the method of the ordinary point. And
oh, that's right.
All this.
Legendre only had a small part. No, sorry, my essay was on Fermat. But there was this guy, Lord Kelvin,
who
was brother of somebody else.
He wasn't actually Lord Kelvin. He had quite an ordinary name like John Smith.
That's right. And he had... he built all these machines for doing integrations and evaluating power series, all mechanical.
Who?
Lord Kelvin.
Kelvin.
First,
I seem to remember something.
He built an integrating planimeter for calculating when the tides would come.
That's right.
Because
and they thought that was so good. They gave him a
the government actually wanted it for calculating tides, and it was also used for astronomy
Yeah,
and so on, so the ships could find their way.
that's right.
So he built this incredible device that would actually predict, for years in advance what the tides were going to be.
That's right. You just turn the handles and it would solve elliptic DEs.
And the other thing that he built was this integrating device that could get the solution of series of simultaneous differential equations by mechanical integration with an accuracy of about 1%.
Good heavens.
And, very high order ones, they had to be linear, and when he died, he was trying to work on non-linear ones.
Good heavens.
And this is back in about, 18, whatever it was,
Yeah.
1870 or something. Quite incredible it was. All these little balls and cones.
Oh, wait a minute. Aren't you think about Charles Babbage
No, he was the guy that...
with his analytical indifference engines?
Yes, he was the computer man. I wrote one on him too. It's funny you should mention that. They were the 2 essays I had to write for maths
Oh.
in a subject called History of Mathematics.
Oh, that'd be good.
Quite taining.
Oh, we have to do bilge things like Australian politics.
Yeah. Oh, Babbage, the computers were fascinating.
Good heavens.
And this guy, at the end of it, this guy called Hollerith came along.
Yeah.
And he devised this brilliant system of counting the results for the elections
That's
at
right.
the turn of the century, using cards with little holes in them, and people would punch the holes, and they fed them through these machines,
And they go...
all mechanical,
clickety-clack.
electromechanical, and then he got together with some other guy and formed a machine called formed a company rather, called something or other.
Didn't it later become IBM?
Yeah. They changed the name 10 years later to the International Business Machine Company.
Yeah.
So we all know who he employs now down in South Melbourne there. Anyway, we say evening to the... so Mr. Hollerith, yes, it was well worth his trouble to get his little automated vote counting system accepted by the government for that census.
Yes,
It
right.
was a census, not an election. It was the
Oh,
census.
incidentally,
Mm.
in 1930, one of the universities, which one? It was American or British, they actually built Babbage's analytical engine,
Oh, yeah.
just sort of for a project.
Mm.
And they said it was an excellent machine. The only hassle was that to change the problem,
Yeah, it's not programmable particularly.
you just have to rebuild the machine.
We have to put different gears and things in,
Yeah,
which is
that's
impractical because then they don't mesh. The other problem was that anything that you gave it, any good mathematician could solve equally fast. It just took the labour out.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was incredibly slow,
Yeah,
being a gigantic mechanical machine.
yeah.
So that was the other problem. But the thing about Babbage was he had all the right ideas, and if you look at the architecture of Babbage's engine, you can even relate it to a modern computer. Like, it had a central processing unit,
Yeah,
it had input peripheral, output peripheral,
yeah.
and all this grunge. And as they say, the only thing where he missed out was that he was born 150 years too early, because the technology wasn't available to support his ideas.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
it had to wait for...
The article I read on him that he also, because he couldn't make his machine as standard bits, he had to invent a lot of the tools to make the bits.
Yeah. Who was that famous mathematician around the Second World War, who we all know so well? He was basically responsible for the modern computer architecture.
Von Neumann.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah. That's the guy.
They're still trying to build non-von Neumann computers.
It's a bit hard.
They just don't know how to go about it.
He was quite brilliant.
How'd they think, well, a von Neumann computer is just so inherently slow. What process can we have that just inherently...
No, the brilliant... See, before von Neumann came along, what they were trying to do with their... von Neumann, when he came along, see, they had all these guys working on pewter technology on the first valve one,
Yeah.
the Univac or whatever it was, or whatever they called it, in 1945 5 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And their idea was to do everything parallel. Everything was sort of done in parallel, like there were just looms, gargantuan looms. All the processes were parallel processes.
Yeah.
Or it was more like the information flowing through the putors was all done in parallel.
Good heavens.
And von Neumann came along with the idea. It seems trivial to say it, but he came along with the idea of sending all the information through serially.
Yeah.
And everyone jumped up and down and said that that'll slow things down and all the rest of it and blah, blah, blah. But in actual fact, once he did that and generated the required architecture with a CPU in the middle and the peripherals hanging off and all the rest of it and so on, the machine actually turned out to be a far more flexible device and one which could be developed far better with existing technology and so on. And that just took off from there. And since then, the design has never changed.
Well,
basically, it hasn't changed.
Well, let me see. Before ENIAC, we had Bell Telephone Laboratories. When this chap came along and said you could use Boolean algebra to solve relay logic problems.
Oh, that was the other reason why Babbage failed, because Mr. Boolean hadn't developed his algebra, so there was no mathematical basis.
Yeah.
For developing the necessary...
Apparently Bell Telephones built up a relay computer, just built of relays.
What, after Mr. Boolean?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Some young engineer, some young upstart at Bell Telephones
called Mr. Boolean?
Not Boolean. He became quite famous later on. He was sort of integral big man of ENIAC.
Yeah.
But he built a calculator, a sort of 4-function Super Wizzo calculator, just out of 1 million relays.
Yeah.
After he said, hang on, you can use Boolean logic to solve for relay problems. So he went home one night with a box full of
mathematical logic problem
with used relays and said, I want to add some numbers. And so he wired up 1 million relays and he could add numbers with it. And so he ran off to Bell Telephone. They said, yeah. Well, what good is that? And so he convinced them to give him so many thousand relays, and he wired them all up and made a calculator, which took...
Did they say what good is that after he'd built it?
Yeah. And it took 1 second to perform a 16-digit multiplication. And
1 second?
Yeah.
Take more than that, I think.
But they
takes almost that for a modern computer. It does. It takes about 500 microseconds to do a software multiplication.
Oh, software.
It's incredibly long.
Well, look, a good computer has a hardware multiply divide.
Well, I don't think his would have, because it's only very recently that you've got hardware multiplication. Really, only since large-scale integration.
Well, I don't see why you can't hardwire it in relay logic.
Well, it's... One of our
is
projects was to develop a hardware multiplier.
Yeah.
And it's quite a bit more plex than just the general CPU layout of the thing itself.
Yeah.
It's really quite plex. If you're going to round it and do it all properly.
Yeah.
And allow space for the double length product and then... Like there's an algorithm for doing multiplication called Booth's algorithm.
Yeah.
Which is where you move the bit along, you move the thing along to the left by 1 and add it, and then take the bit and look at it and do other things, then move it along again. And if there's 16 bits, you've got to do 16 moves.
Yeah.
And it's quite a long, like it's a 1-page program if it's written in software.
Yeah.
And you can do it with hardware, but it requires a lot of registers. Like it requires, half a dozen registers, and one single 16-bit register in relays would be quite a... Oh, no, wait a minute. What would it be? It'd just be 16 relays, I suppose.
Yeah, that's
right.
16 self-latching relays. Chunk, 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 bong. All stored.
I suppose if his device multiplied, it would either have a permanent program in inverted commas to do it, or else it would have to be a hardware multiplier.
Yeah.
That was the other thing about von Neumann, was that at that time, when they were doing the ENIAC and so on, they didn't have any convenient means of programming.
That's right.
They used to go in the
sit
back
down
and...
with a soldering iron and a
No, they had rotary switches. Oh, truth, they still didn't come through. No, they had thousands of 12-position rotary switches around the back. So, and the concept of machine instructions hadn't really been developed, but, you know, it was just...
computer was eventually put to as writing for World War II trajectory tables.
Oh, that's... yeah. I keep... every time you say something, it triggers something in my mind. That's why von Neumann was sent down to the ENIAC.
Yeah.
Because they wanted something for calculating trajectories.
That's right.
He made quite a point of that, you know, as a theoretical effort for the university, it was a particular university where they were doing the design work.
Yeah.
It was going along at a certain speed, but when the war came up, they suddenly decided, well, we need it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think for some of the calculations on the ENIAC, the valve one, which had 25 million 12 AU7s in it or something, it's still...
Been 6 SN7s, they didn't have 12 AU7s then.
Yeah, double triads anyway. It still took...
Imagine that, all octal valves all going for a glow.
But some of the calculations took about 20 hours to perform.
Yeah, that's right.
And the problem was that the reliability factor of the computer, since it had valves in it, it had about 20,000 tubes in it.
Just wouldn't last that long.
That's right. The average mean time between failures was 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
So the only reason they managed to get the calculations out was just because there was a statistical distribution of failure, and therefore sometimes it would go for 20 hours without a failure.
Yeah.
But just the fact that they had 20,000 valves plugged into 20,000 valve sockets, and all the rest of the...
for a bakelite and a carbonise.
And all the resistors and so on connected to them. And
it's just so, I mean, a computer bit of tar-ended capacitor, body tip dot resistors, and bakelite valve sockets.
Back in those days.
And
True.
yeah.
I mean, even my mixer's only got 5 valves in it, and that goes for a crackle occasionally. And
Yeah.
imagine if you had 25,000.
Yeah, I mean...
Plus all those rotary wafer switches around the back.
And just think of, this is it, the ENIAC computer also had something like 10,000 relays. Just for effect.
Just to make it clang a bit.
You could just imagine how much dust.
Imagine the racket. And they had this gargantuan air conditioner to keep the heat going through.
Yes, keep it warm.
It must have been really something to see that thing operating, though. It would have been such a...
Or just to walk in the morning and tune it up.
Oh, what a thrill it would be to turn it on.
Chunk,
All this... I mean, I saw a photograph at the Smithsonian Institute where they've just got a tiny section of it.
Yeah.
And you've got all these racks and racks and racks of valves and relays.
Yeah.
And it's only just some small section of the calculating mechanism that they had.
That's right. Half of the thing that just... what did they spend? It was 5,000 valves just for 10 memories. They could remember 10 numbers.
Yeah, that's correct, because all the memory was valve too.
Yeah.
They hadn't got developed magnetic memories.
And I don't even believe they ran the thing in binary. They were all decimal numbers.
I forget. Not
That
sure
is,
about that.
your buses were 10 parallel lines.
No, I
And,
forget now.
Their values represented a decimal number.
Yeah.
And so to store a decimal number, you would need 10 storage elements just to store one part of that number. So to store 9, you'd have to clack over 9 relays out of, a possible 10. And they thought this binary business is a lot better in the end.
Yes, I don't know. I forget whether von Neumann actually came to the stage of doing it with binary, but if he had, I'm sure they would have been doing all their calculations in binary. They would have been actually inputting the numbers as binary numbers at the switches around the back.
Yeah.
To do it and taking them out as binary results.
Yeah. But sort of the number itself, it wasn't BCD or anything. It was decimal direct.
Hey, wait a minute. No, you couldn't do it with decimal. Because how could you get numbers that wouldn't be multiples of 10?
How do you get numbers that wouldn't be multiple of 10?
See, with binary, you can represent any integer.
Oh, but look, for one number, right,
Yeah.
say in a computer that works in decimal, to represent, say,
Oh,
the
you-
number 9,
Yeah.
you'd have to have at least 10 switches with, say, 9 of them all set up to on, and that would mean 9. Correspondingly, 1 would mean that you just have one switch that would be set to on, and 10, you know,
Oh.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Just like that. And that's why their memory was so inefficient, because it wasn't a binary memory, or even BCD. Because, of course, with BCD, to represent a decimal number, you only need 4 bits. But this computer, to represent a number, needed 10 bits.
Hang on, we'll just eavesdrop. Hang on. Oh, they've gone off.
Who lives on this farm,
Mm.
and since 1965 has been collecting computers.
All right.
Oh yes, he's just collecting computers, and he just went around with a low loader and semi-trailer to computer manufacturers around the country, saying, "Do you have a dead computer so I could have it in my museum?"
What?
And oh well, look, because contracts would expire, and like IBM, they'd put in a new computer and they'd remove the old one free of charge. And normally, well, they'd just put an axe through it so it couldn't be sold.
Keep talking, back in a sec.
And so this chap just went around and said, "Look, I can't pay anything for it because I don't have any money, but I just like to put it in my basement." So these computer people said, "What?" They said, "What?" And gave it to him anyway. And so ever since 1965, he's just been collecting dead computers and getting them going. And he has this barn just full of ancient bash computers, all talking to each other. Of course, the laugh of it is the laugh now. Of course, it can all be replaced just by, well, one little circuit board. The one thing that's, I think, of some amusement value is even these discrete processors made of transistors. Now, I don't know. I don't know where Mr. Branch has gone. He's gone out to make a cup of coffee. I wouldn't say that's a very good idea at this time. You'll have to get up early, you know. You'll wake up at 9 o'clock, as I did this morning, and say, "It's 9 o'clock," and then you try, when you're still half asleep, to understand its significance. And then the significance of the time slowly dawns on you, and then you go for a panic. Such fluid personality.
Yeah. I was just getting a bit hot. So I just went out and got something out of the fridge to cool off. I've got the heater going. The place started getting super hot, so I
Yeah.
opened the window. So there's about 4 square feet of window open, but still super hot.
Right, it's a bit of a laugh, really. I mean, you just go to a junk shop now
Yeah.
and buy computer bits for almost nothing.
Mm.
I mean, theoretically, you should be able to hook them all together after spending 10 years designing interface circuits. It sounds like that. It sort of sounds all fizzy and...
Well, I bought all these extra browns just in case we ran out at your place. And ever since that night, they've been bouncing around in the back of the jub unopened. So when Beatty was here earlier on, I dashed out and grabbed one. But he shot through. I suddenly thought, wow, it's sitting there in the freezer, I'd better remove it.
Oh, horrors, look at the hour.
Yes, I think that's why I'm drinking it, because I'm I'm sitting here sort of feeling relatively wide awake, so
Yeah.
I feel like something to make me a bit sleepy.
Oh, I had lots of sleeps this afternoon.
Oh,
I had a really fascinating dream too.
Oh, now what?
That I was in this city,
Hmm.
and it was a really entertaining city. It was full of interesting-looking buildings and bright lights, and a million vision stations. Because I remember in this dream looking over this Bash Visions, and every channel had something different on it.
Hmm.
And it
Must
was
have been the
just-
States.
I don't know what it was. It really was entertaining, and sort of went to the top of this building and had a look at the vista, and it was all lots of trees, and it was just so entertaining. And I can't make of this
The Vista.
the view.
Oh, fair. Yeah.
And, you know, you look at mountains and cities over the horizon, and it just looks so exceptionally entertaining, really pleasant.
Well, the meaning of that dream, Kay,
And
is
here
probably
we are.
that...
Just a minute,
sorry,
before you start the analysis. I'll
dream.
I went along and asked someone what the name of the city was, and this is what it was called. It was called Atomic Bonus City.
Atomic boner.
Atomic Bonus.
Bonus.
B-O-N-U-S.
Ah.
So, I can't make of that.
Interesting. Quite. I wonder if that's a futuristic dream.
I don't know, it certainly was. I mean, these buildings certainly look futuristic.
Oh, well.
And one building that was of exceptional tenements value, it was a giant sphere. You know how buildings are sort of all glass windows and everything, they're just boxes.
Yeah.
Well, this sort of building was built into a giant sphere.
Oh.
And it was quite strange because all the glass was coloured and sort of shaped to look like a map of the world. It just looked complete tenements. So if any architects are listening there...
Have you been reading a bit of science fiction lately?
Not at all. This
Oh.
is why I can't make of it. I mean...
Have you been... Have you got any idea what might have caused the dream?
It was... No idea at all.
Hmm.
Except when I usually go for sleeps after field in the afternoon, they seem to be more vivid. I suppose it's just because of the great amount of sensory input only a few minutes previous to that. And the fact it's still light. And as such, it was a very light sleep, usually optimum for interesting dream effects. But I found this dream exceptionally entertaining.
It's certainly most entertaining when you wake up and remember them in reasonable detail.
I thought, well, look, I'll have to remember this. This is just too incredible.
Usually you tend to sleep beyond the time where you dream.
Yeah.
So by the time you wake up,
It's all erased.
it's all gone for an EEPROM.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well,
log tape's about to run out. I've got about 60 seconds, 90 seconds left here.
Ah.
This is a complete factors. I was only going to come on for 90 minutes tonight.
Well, you'll just have to get it out of your system.